We've been talking about world order. There are many ways to approach it through theories of international relations, through a religious lens. There are a lot of Christians that see the Antichrist at work in trying to arrange a new world order.
Big time, yeah.
We haven't defined what that could possibly mean. We may come back to it. That's quite a controversial and confusing thing. And a lot of people have half-baked notions about it.
I don't know whether it's going to be a woke new order.
Is it going to be a woke new world order?
Or a different type of new world order.
Well, remember what I said last time. It's what we make of it, with help from the spiritual powers, because in most faith traditions there are intermediaries between the divine and human beings. You can call them angels and demons. They are spiritual beings, not corporeal like us, that inspire us to do good, give us thoughts of hope and cooperation, and joy. And there are also spiritual beings that can help us become more devious and cunning and fall more into bondage and help others fall more into bondage. And there's a general materializing force on the planet that is always seeking more security, which is like more bondage. So much so that people talk about a prison planet and locking down the planet. And that's all very emotive language. Is there any truth to this? Well, we have to proceed slowly, and we'll circle around it, and maybe we'll, by the end of this series on world order, maybe we will be able to establish a few sensible points.
Well, there's an element of truth in everything.
About it, yes, yes. But should we begin closer to home? Should we begin with ourselves? The peacemaker obviously is concerned with world order, international order, because you've got a collection of different peoples, and how are they to relate to each other? If they don't have bridges of understanding and goodwill built between them, they're liable to end up in war, the very antithesis of what we stand for. Therefore, peace education involves understanding the ways in which we can build a better world order. There's no need to be afraid of the phrase world order. We need to build a better world order. And we need to start with ourselves and identifying who we are. I'm an Australian citizen, for example. Correct? That's my citizenship. So I have an allegiance to Australia, whatever that means. It's political, it's cultural. I want to be a good Australian, a good representative of Australia. I want to deepen my knowledge of what my Australianness consists in. I want to have a broad and balanced notion of what Australian identity is. There was a time when it used to be 99% British, and there was a white Australia policy in this country. Now, it's a multicultural country. And multiculturalism can be a vibrant thing and a very invigorating thing for a national economy and life. But it's not without its drawbacks either, because where is national unity to be found? There needs to be unity without uniformity. So the different cultural groups all need, in a sense, implicitly or explicitly, to subscribe to some vision of Australianness over here in my neck of the woods, in Belinda's neck of the woods. Do we have a document that we sign up to, making a declaration of citizenship? We do have documents, but they don't necessarily do that. The English language seems to be important in this country, and there are other markers of identity as well. But everybody comes to this country from somewhere, even our Australian Aboriginals. They may have migrated tens of thousands of years ago, maybe 60,000 years ago. They came across a land bridge from Asia. They were migrants to this country. Our indigenous in the sense that they were the first here, the natives, the originals, aboriginal from the beginning, and then they've been followed by other peoples. And whilst different groups of European, Dutch, Portuguese and French had sighted or touched upon this continent, it was the English that colonised it. And so the influence of the British Empire and the British system of law has been great here. The Westminster system of law, the adversarial system, and the parliamentary tradition. Protestantism, Catholicism, and the philosophy of the Enlightenment, according to one of our great historians, Manning Clark, were big shapers of this nation. And I suppose the secular tradition that stems from the Enlightenment has got stronger over time as fewer and fewer Christians go to church. Some people think we're in a post-Christian era, but I don't think it's that simple, because there are signs of revival everywhere. And again, it's not so simplistic. These simplistic, naive takes on history are not that helpful. Like, oh, as we become more modern and more scientific, religion, which is a barbaric superstition, will just fall by the wayside. No. In parts of the world, people are embracing religion more enthusiastically, more zealously than ever. People are also returning to religion. They feel they need it, and they do. So after the Second World War, the pathways of migration opened for Southern Europeans, Greeks and Italians and so on. They worked on our Snowy scheme. And then other Europeans from Northern Europe. And then Australia's had a heart, and it's taken in refugees from Southeast Asia after the Vietnam War. And it's taken in refugees from the Middle East. There was the Lebanese civil war between 1975 and 1990. Now, Lebanon is where my ancestors come from. So that's my ethnicity. It's Lebanese. So I am a Lebanese Australian, and this makes up my identity, political, civic, cultural identity. So we have all these groups now in Australia making up a multicultural society. And these groups, as I say, enrich Australia with their different cuisines, their different customs, their different types of dress, their different approaches to work, creativity. It's a vibrant culture. But
and they're intermarrying, so the cultures are blending, which is good.
yes, intermarriage is a huge thing
It's very good.
because it creates something new,
That's right.
like a melting pot.
And you'll notice that the offspring from intermarriages are stronger, genetically stronger, far more intelligent in many cases.
Well, I don't want to go down that road, but they may be more intelligent, they may be less intelligent, but
they say that the further away.
Yeah, there is
from
something
your
to be
gene
said
pool,
for intermarriage. Often the offspring they are striking.
very good looking.
They can be good looking. They can be blending the best of both worlds.
That's
See,
right.
if I go back a few generations, my ancestors from Lebanon, your ancestors from Lebanon, they would have married somebody from their own village or a
They
neighbouring
stuck to
village.
their own.
They would be marrying somebody of Lebanese stock. But being a second generation
It's changing.
Australian, I've married Anglo-Celtic stock.
Yes.
And so my children are a new, they being like third generation, they are, from my end, I mean, my wife is fifth generation. So her ancestors came out, in the early days of the colony. So my children are something that, well, obviously didn't exist before, but within them, they embody a new sense of Australianness, don't they?
That's right.
So it's not just different pockets of culture, but it's fusions too. So the different cultures come into engagement, close alignment. Whenever there's been wars, I suppose a lot of those Americans that went to the Vietnam War, they intermarried with the local population. Wherever troops have been stationed around the world, there are many downsides to maintaining an empire and military bases around the world, but maybe one of the benefits is that the cultures come together in a fusion through intermarriage and new bloodlines. I talked of Australia as a melting pot, but that term melting pot is more usually applied to the United States of America, where different groups have been coming. They've had immigration has been big there as it's been here in nation building. And after a few generations, the ethnic component becomes less important than the citizenship that Americans share with fellow Americans, their allegiance to the Constitution.
You become aligned with your country.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the first generation that comes to a country may go to an ethnic enclave, Lebanese may join other Lebanese, an Italian may join other Italians.
They even
In
have their own
particular,
areas.
they have their own areas. And in America, this was very pronounced. The German immigrants would form pockets in a particular city, and the Poles would form pockets, and the Irish would form pockets, and they'd have their own churches in their own communities and so on.
Their own foods and whatnot.
Yes.
Yeah.
But after the 60s, and the movements of people within America, and the blacks coming north and so on, and there was more of an attempt to try and define people in terms of black and white, and a lot of the ethnic differentiation went by the board. There have been some pushes towards making Americans more American, like Henry Ford's car factory and so on. And he had pretty strong views about American identity. But I think I just make this general point that whether you're dealing with immigration into the US or into Australia, into one of these new countries that are part of the modern world, that have grown up in the modern world. I mean, we call the United States the New World as compared to the old world of Europe. Initially, there's a tendency to stay with your own ethnic group in an ethnic enclave or ghetto and keep to your own and continue intermarrying with your own as you would have done in the old country. But
That's changed.
it changes over time, and it changes by sheer dint of assimilation and time in the new country, and interacting with people of other ethnicities, and being attracted and then wanting to form unions with people of other ethnicities. And so a new multi-ethnic national identity forms, as in countries like the US and Australia. National identity is ever a religion-free zone, even the secular state. If you go back to the talks that I gave on human freedom and human rights, and how the government, if there has been a breach of rights, has to really intervene with a good grasp of the moral law, which is an implicit knowledge of religious principles. People bring their religion into the public square, even in a secular state where they're more or less meant to keep it private. They still do. And so one way of, if ethnicity is dissolving, one way of keeping a sense of being part of a bigger organism is a religious connection. See, we were baptised in the Eastern Orthodox Christian Church.
That's right.
And that was part of being Lebanese diaspora. And some of us Lebanese went through the Maronite Church, and some through the Melkite Church, and some through the Antiochian Orthodox Church, and so on. And
but you've become Catholic.
Later I was received into the Catholic Church to raise my family in the Catholic Church. And it gives a sense of Christian.
And Darian, actually, your wife,
my wife
went from Church of England to Catholic.
Yes, so she came from the Anglican Church. If I came from the Eastern Orthodox, so it seemed that the common meeting ground was Catholic. Even thinking of it in terms of small c Catholic, as in universal, a place of meeting. And so religious affiliation and identity can take the place of ethnicity. Do you see what I mean? As a unifier, as a bonder.
Oh, of course.
And there's a whole community that radiates out from one's parish, a church community, and so on. And it also puts you in meaningful relationship to Christians throughout the world. Do you see what I'm saying? And the same would apply to adherents of other faith traditions.
That's right.
They feel a sense of solidarity with people around the world. Now, this sense of solidarity that comes from religion crosses or cuts across national boundaries as well. Am I a Christian first, an Australian first, or a Lebanese first? Well,
I say I'm an Australian first.
You have to speak for yourself, but most believers consider their relationship with God as paramount. And everything good flows from that, including their marriage, their family, or whatever is good in their life. So, yes.
That's private.
Yeah, a believer first, a Christian first. Right? And that my sense of family responsibility is bound up with that. I feel strong ties to family and to extended family. And I also feel a loyalty to country, Australia.
Absolutely, yeah.
You've got your idea of what Australian means. I've got my idea, and every other Australian of the 25 million living on this continent, or more now.
I think we've kind of lost our identity a bit.
They've got their own notions of identity. It would be hard to define it because you've got to do justice to the English heritage and at the same time to what the migrants have brought, but also fundamentally to the Indigenous people of this country who had that primary relationship to the land and have been custodians of the land and the life forms on this country.
That's right.
Anyway, I know this is a video meant for the whole world, but wherever you are, you know that it is a hot political potato, the relationship between the Indigenous people of your lands and the non-Indigenous or the later migrants, working on the principle that we're all migrants at one point or another. Some people think we came from the Rift Valley of Tanzania in Africa, the first humans that then spread out across the globe. But whatever your anthropology and paleontology point to, it's a question of time before some people are in a place and then other people are in a place. But these two peoples have to learn how to live together. And you can argue that the white settlers in America, or let's call them the European settlers, white is a pretty meaningless term, I think. To define a person by the colour of their skin is pretty meaningless. And white and black didn't come about until the 1600s anyway. I think in Jamestown, in the New World, where they were trying to identify two groups of indentured labourers, or slaves, or the slaves with the dark skin and the slaves with the white skin.
It's the same in Lebanon. It's a mixed bag. You can get redheads with freckles and dark people, and it's...
So does it make much sense to define somebody by a sub-racial classification?
Like, no, that doesn't make sense.
You're a brown-skinned person, you're a Mediterranean olive-skinned person, you're a white person. What's a white person? A Caucasian? No, they originally thought of themselves as German speakers or Polish or French speakers.
There are white people in the Mediterranean that are whiter than people in, say, England. Mm-hmm. No, you can't really say that.
I've said before that I believe in one human race. That's the race. It's humanity.
That's
but
right.
there may be differentiations within it. But these are superficial qualities like eye fold, skin colour, to make distinctions between people on. I think it's more meaningful to make distinctions based on ethnicity, and then I think it's highly meaningful. And ultimately, in a world where the melting pot applies, ethnicity is going to be sort of watered down over time as people intermarry in a new country. So then their religious affiliation and their national, their civic affiliation, which country they belong to. You know, are you a citizen of Australia or the US, Israel, or Algeria, or Malaysia? These things become important. Religious affiliation and national affiliation. And this is all preparatory to understanding world order, isn't it? Because we have to understand from where we are. We're not understanding it in a vacuum. So in my struggling to find my relationship with my fellow Australians, I'm wrestling with the concept of Australian identity. And therefore, I must also contemplate the relationship between Australia and the rest of the world. What kind of animal is Australia? On the one hand. Then on the other hand, I have an ethnicity, I have a heritage, I'm Lebanese. And what does it mean to be of Lebanese heritage? What does Lebanese mean? Lebanon used to be under a French protectorate, but from 1946 it became its own country. And it has been, in its better days, a model of a kind of interfaith polity where people of different faith traditions and cultures live together in harmony. That's how I like to think of Lebanon. They had a confessional system of government, quite unusual, where there would be a Maronite sort of Catholic president, a Sunni Muslim prime minister, and a Shia as Speaker of the House. So they had a